Former prisoner and inmate.
You did it.
What are you doing, Guns?
You bit the hell out of me.
Wanna see you with your hands up. Going straight to the sky, let me see you put your hands up. Cause we do till we die and we on another level.
I'm at New York City.
To the rest of your body, got a piece of the pie. Told you once, told you twice that we only got one life.
On the way to achieve success after prison, and he's going to share his story with us right now.
Diamond shine, best at night. You wear yours, I'll wear mine. Go dumb tonight.
Well, in the last part, I think it was like episode 5 or part 5 or whatever I called it, where I had just got busted. Well, I had been busted for selling steroids, and then went to jail. And then rather than go live with my cousins, who had been, they got turned out on drugs while I was gone. Like right about the time I was going, the day that I went away to jail, they tried heroin for the first time because they've been taking this stuff called Nubane, which is a synthetic morphine. And we're just all bodybuilders, and somebody said, here, a little insulin needle, put it in your shoulder and pop a couple milligrams, and you're like, oh man, this feels awesome. We didn't know what the frick about opiates and nothing like that. We didn't know addiction. We know nothing like that. So we started getting addicted to this stuff, and then when we couldn't get it, one of our cousins brings heroin over, says it does the same thing. So a Fairlife protein shake, I'm thirsty. So I go to jail the next morning. Now I get kicked out of the work release program, and I actually ended up doing, I think 94 days total, because I got time cut. But anyways, so now when I get out, I move in with my grandparents because I don't want to go live with these guys that I know have turned into junkies. And my cousin would visit me in jail, and he'd tell me, he's like, yeah, Dino's strung out. I know I'm strung out too, or we're taking it every day here. I'm like, oh, dude, I don't want to go be around that, man. I'm good, dude. I go live with my grandparents. My grandma makes me food every day, does my laundry. I live in a nice house, basically free. I did end up getting them a few $100. But it was tough living with some old people too, though. Because they were old retired people in their like 70s, and that's really tough for a young 20-year-old kid. And my problem was I was a hustler, a street guy in the streets selling drugs. They knew I sold drugs. I had a freaking brand new car and a crotch rocket motorcycle, gold chains, dressed nice. No job though. And my grandpa knew for sure. My grandma knew too. So, and then girls were calling the house all day. She knew I had a girlfriend. My girlfriend Ramona would come over 3-4 times a week, 5 times a week. We'd go down to the basement where my bedroom was, and they knew what we were freaking doing down there. But I was sneaking other girls in there all the freaking time. And I had girls calling the house every day. 2-3 different girls would call. And my grandma got to the point where she'd be like, the girl would be like, is Al there? She's like, who's this? No, that's not Ramona. She goes, no, he's with his girlfriend. He's out with his girlfriend. And the girl would be like, okay, tell him Christy called. Or she would go, who's this? Oh, son. And she'd go, another putana on the phone, putana, which means whore. They'd ask me, what does that mean? Don't worry about it. And she started yelling that, and they were like, they wanted me to freaking, not stay out all night or come home at a reasonable hour, and I was always on the phone, and they were very talkative people. The Sicilian people are super talkative. That family, that community of Sicilians are very, very tight-knit. Everybody calls everybody constantly. I mean, it's like, dude, all day, every day, the phone rings, and my grandma's on the phone, or my grandpa's on the phone, and they're speaking in Sicilian. I mean, they are some of the most social people I've ever seen. All Mediterranean people are like that, because I was around Arabs, Chaldeans and stuff, and they were the same freaking way. Everybody's always on the phone. You get calls from your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your nephews, everybody. And they're always stopping by your house too, to see you and have a cup of coffee, talk. And that's one of the reasons I always later on in life, I realized I think my grandfather was a liaison of some kind, or a go-between for the mob, if he wasn't himself, because he would either have relatively high or very high level mobsters come by the house, stop by and have coffee, and some of it times it'd be once a year or twice a year. Some guys it'd be once every week or two, and they'd chatter away in Sicilian. And then my grandfather, whose eyes was going bad, would say, Alonzo, come on, I'm gonna take me to go see Gambati Corrado, or Gambati this guy, or Gambati that guy. And there's names. I'm not gonna say all the names, because the problem is they got grandsons and nephews and people that are still alive, and I'm not gonna put them on blast. But one of my grandfather's best friends was a Corrado, whether it was Dominic or Tony or both of them. They constantly were on the phone, Gambati Corrado. And so I'd go see them. We'd go to their businesses or their homes, and then we'd just go in there and sit down, have coffee, something to eat, talk for 15-20 minutes, and then we leave. Then we go see this other guy. So I think my grandpa was like getting information, maybe even money. Maybe they were slipping him an envelope, I don't know, to give to somebody else. And then we go see another guy, and then after we see that guy, we go see another guy, and this could go on for 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon, 5 hours. We spend the whole freaking afternoon driving from one place to another. There would be businesses. We go to the Eastern Market. We go to all the. I remember we went to Randazzo's a lot, Savaggio's a lot. On the west side, there was a used car lot we went to all the time, where I met some old mob guys who liked me. They ended up putting me to work years later, not years later, but months later. And so I'm just getting to know these men in a way that I didn't know them before, because when they come to the house, they either sit around in the kitchen talking in Sicilian with my grandmother or my mother around and stuff like that, and they don't. I'm sure they weren't talking shop, in front of the women. Sometimes they would go in the back and shut the door. And I was a young kid. Why would I care? I'm not gonna eavesdrop. I don't even speak Sicilian, so I don't know what they're talking about. I never even thought twice about it. It's just normal behavior. Old Sicilian come over to the house, talk for a minute in the kitchen. They go in the back room, shut the door. You can hear them in there talking Sicilian for an hour. Then the door shuts. He says, "All right, goodbye to Pete. We'll see you next time, or see you later. Give me a call tomorrow." And they leave. Then my grandpa would be like, "Hey, come on, we're gonna go to the market. We'll drive you to the market. Come here." This is like absolutely normal day-to-day behavior. It was normal my whole life. Now these are guys I'd seen my whole life. Some more than others. Some guys I'd seen them since far back as I can remember, and some of them I started to come around like when my teenage years. I'm starting to recognize them. My mom would be like, "This is your Uncle Paul, this is Uncle Tony, this is Uncle Pete, this is Uncle blah blah blah." I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And people don't realize when you're in a big Sicilian family that everybody is your cousin or uncle to some degree, whether it's first or second or third cousins, or an uncle through a marriage, or blah blah blah. And that's how you address them. You don't call him Tony. You're not a freaking 14-year-old kid going, "Hey Tony," you say Uncle Tony. And that's how you're introduced to them, and that's how you remember them. You're a kid. You don't question, I wonder how they're my uncle. I don't know. Then you go to a funeral or wedding or anniversary party, and there's 300 people there, and you recognize all your aunts and uncles and these are all the men that you recognize from the house over the years. And you say hi to them, and then some of the younger guys, the kids that I knew from the neighborhood that were my age, what's up, sometimes I'd be introduced to them. Like my mom would say, "Well, this is your cousin Johnny, this is your cousin Pamela, this is your cousin Laura," or whatever. And I'm like, all right, I didn't say how. Well, how was they my cousins? I didn't give a shit. And all I cared about was getting money in the street, chasing ass, being a bum, because I was a bum, I was a loser. So this is the stuff that I'm doing at this point in the game. I'm 20 years old, I'm fresh out of jail. Now keep in mind, I'm out like 3 days, right? And then I called my boy in Roseville and said, "Man, I got to get in the game, dude. I got no money." He's like, "Oh, cool, dude. Come over here." So he tells me to call another guy. And I call the other guy, and that guy, his name is Chris, And so I end up hooking up with him, going to his house, and he had a 100-pound bale of good weed. And it's a funny story, because I get to his house, we weren't really that close. We had a bit of a backstory. I won't even get into that. Like, we got kind of in a beef because of some girls a couple years before, but he didn't know it was me, and he called me trying to act tough, and I go, yo, this is Al, remember me? And he's like, Al, I'm like, yeah, I sold you some steroids, a couple months ago. He's like, oh, what's up, dog? And he's like, oh, man, this girl's tripping, said you spit in her face, and blah, blah. I said, yeah, she said some foul shit to me about my girl, so I spit on her. And then I'm waiting for one of her boyfriends to try and fight, and she calls you, wants you. He's like, nah, man, just do me a favor, man. Leave her alone. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. He was a tough kid, and he was a hustler, and he freaking good-looking guy, and he kind of a legend on the east side. He lived in Detroit, in the hood. He had hung around a tough crew. His crew was tough. Badasses. I was been out with them and got into some brawls and stuff. And they ain't for no games. Even though he was a pretty boy, he'd fight. And so when I call him and say, hey man, I'm gonna talk some business, whatever, because it was a mutual friend said you need to hook up with him. So he's like, yeah, come over at this time. This is my house. It was a house on 7 Mile in Detroit, like 2 houses off the expressway. And so I pull up and I knock on the door. It's a nice house. It's not like it's in Detroit, but it's in a really pretty nice area of Detroit. It's like probably 85% white at the time. And it was not saying that blacks are bad, but I'm just saying that's what it was. That was the demographic at the time. And the farther you go in, the blacker it got, and a lot more got worse, crime and stuff. So I go in there, and he says, come on in. So he lets me in. He said, come in the basement. And I'll never forget it. He's got this song, this Biggie Smalls song playing that I'd never heard. I think it was all a dream, Word Up magazine, whatever it was. And pretty sure that's the song. And so we walk into the basement. It's got a plushed out, hooked up, pimped out basement. The whole house is plush. And I walk down there, and on a big square coffee table in the middle, like just like a lounge down there, with couches, like a little, lounge. And in the middle of it was this coffee table, this big coffee table. And on top of it was a mound of weed. Probably 10, 20 pounds? I don't know, I'd say 10 pounds. Big mound of weed. It was a lot of weed. And it looked like some good weed. I could smell it. As soon as we were going down the stairs, I smell it. I'm like, jeez, what the frick, man? This house reeks like weed. So he walks down there, and he's got a blunt. It's like one of the first times I've ever seen a blunt, like somebody rolling a blunt. And I'm pretty sure it's a blunt. You know what it was? It was an Easy Wider. Brown paper is what it was. Because I watched him roll it. So he rolls one up, I said, how is it? And he says, good, roll one up. So he rolls one up. And we start smoking, right? And I'm talking prices with them, how much for blah, 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 and the prices are fair or even good. I'm like, well, I just got out of jail 3 days ago. I got no capital. I got no, I can't, I got no money to buy up front. He goes, take whatever you want. He goes, come here. He walks me into this like cellar in the back of his basement, opens the door, and there's a bale of weed there. It's a 100-pound bale, but what was missing from it was on the table. So there's probably 10, 15 pounds missing from it. It's huge. And I think at the time, that might have been the most weed I'd ever seen. Because I was only 20. And I was like, holy crap, dude. I'm like, wow. He's like, that's nothing, man. We get these all day, man. Freaking. And he would later go on to sell thousands of pounds. Thousands, dude. I could tell you stories about that dude. How he ducked the freaking... The cops tried to freaking get him. And he got tipped off by a cop friend of ours. And said, they're coming to your house to freaking... looks like he said the circus is coming to town, man. You might want to clean up your house. And he did. They still found his brother was on vacation, so he couldn't go into his brother's safe to take whatever was in there. And when they raided the house, they found a couple roaches in his brother's bedroom and a pistol in a safe. But he still, they didn't get charged with it or nothing. Like, I think the pistol was legit. But the funny thing about that is. He got it all. He was expecting a 700-pound order of weed that day. 700 pounds supposed to be delivered. And so he canceled that, and he gets all the paraphernalia, drugs, guns out of the house. This is in St. Clair Shores. So this is in a freaking really nice area. Actually, it's the next block over from where I grew up. And this guy called me to tell me this story. And I didn't even talk to him in months. He calls me up and said, man, come over, man. I got a funny story to tell you. So I come to his house. Like, but I know he's a big player, so when somebody like that calls you, you're like, come over. You're like, oh, all right, this guy's a big player. You're going to go over there and see what's up. And he sits down, he starts telling us, he's looking at my door. See how I kicked in the door there and it's busted? I'm like, oh, shit, man, they got you? He's like, nah, they ain't getting me, man. He told me the guy who tipped him, which I know the guy. It was a guy I never really liked, but he became a cop. And I never really liked the guy. He was kind of a bully. But anyways, he tipped him and said, cops are coming, clean up. And so what he did, this is how gangster this mother ever was, man. They had left like an affidavit on the table saying that they were there. This is what we were here for, search warrant. Well, this is what was seized, blah, blah, blah. They took the safe, I think. Blah, blah. And anyways, and they left it there. So he looks at his door and it's busted open and they didn't secure it. They didn't secure the door. Now, by law, if they bust in your door, when they leave, they have to secure it to make sure no one can just walk in and steal shit, right? So he calls up his boy with a moving van, a moving truck. And they come over. He had a $3,000 pool table, really expensive leather furniture, and our homeboy worked at an electronics store. And he says, after this, he says, print me up the receipts for like 12 grand worth of like high-end stereo equipment, all kinds of stuff. There's no problem. He gives it to him, receipts for all this stuff. So he calls the cops who had just raided his house 3 hours ago and says, hey, listen, I need to report a B&E, breaking and entering. Somebody robbed my house. Because after this guy with the truck pulls up and they load all his shit into this van, this truck. And then they drive off and he calls the police and says, listen, man, you guys were here, you raided my house, but didn't secure the house. After you left, somebody came here and stole everything I own. The cops had no choice but to go there and make a report. And he was right. So he ends up getting like a $20,000 insurance payout. Actually, I think it was $13,000 or $17,000, maybe $17,000. It was a lot, And he's laughed about it. He's like, you dummies, you come in here and got nothing into. And then this detective, there's a number for the detective there. Now, after he makes this report and all this, he calls the detective and says, the guy won't answer. So Chris says, hey, listen, dummies, next time the circus comes to town, let me know, I'll just leave the door open. You don't got to kick my door open, but thank you. And the guy never called back. The detective never called him, which is fine. So flash forward, or go back in time several years, and I'm with him at this house in the basement, and we're smoking this blunt, or big ass joint, and we were smoking, and we're kind of like, he's like this, like dancing, like it was all a dream. And dancing, and I'm sitting on the couch in front of this big mound of weed, right? And he says, take all that. So he said, take it all. I'm saying, take 10. And it was good. It was good too. It's like $800 a pound or something. I'm like, oh great, I can kill it with this. So this was right after I just got out of jail like 3 days ago for selling steroids. And so, but all of a sudden, the funny irony of this was he had this girlfriend. Her name was Samantha. I won't say her last name or nothing like that. But she was kind of a bitch. I don't know why he always went for that shit. He always went for the really kind of stuck up bitch. And she wasn't supposed to come home till later. But the music was up and we were dancing and smoking and the whole basement's a cloud of thick smoke. And I look up and behind him are the stairs going upstairs. And he's like this. And all of a sudden this chick comes walking. She's a hot chick. She comes walking down the stairs like she just came from her job. She's all dressed up, got her purse. She probably opened the door, smelled all this pot, and heard the music, and starts walking down there and sees him like it was all a dream. And she goes, "What the F is going on in my basement? What the fuck is all that freaking weed doing in my house?" Blah blah. She goes, "You mother!" She starts cutting into him, and you can tell he's super embarrassed, like, because he looked up to me too. He saw that I was a player. He thought I was a serious player. He knew I was mob tied. He knew I was a gangster. He knew all this, and he didn't want to look like a punk. And he kind of finally goes. He's smoking his joint, and she walked down right as he was passing it to me. So I'm like reaching for it, and I see her. I'm like, oh. He's like, what? Trying to give it to me. I'm like, dude, behind you. And I turn around, she was there. She's, what the F's him? And he played it like a friggin' pimp. Like, I could tell he was gonna be in trouble, but he played it like a pimp. And he turns around and goes, bitch, get the fuck upstairs. This is big boy business. Get the frick out of here. And I'm sure he probably paid hell for that. But he says, she's like, what? This is my house. Just get the F out of here. We're taking care of business. Go to F upstairs. Handle it like a G. So she leaves, and I package up 10 pounds, take it home. And then now I'm back in the game. So, I go get a beeper. I think I got a cell phone in my girlfriend's name. It was a cell phone called a Nokia, the first generation small cell phones. It was a lot of money. It was like $700 a month, but I didn't care. I thought it looked cool, and I used it for business. And so I'm running around town, like reconnecting with all my weed buyers, you know. Yo, I got weed, you know, and because I'd been gone for 6 months. Really, I've been out of the weed game for the serious weed game. I've been out for like a year and a half, almost 2 years, because I got busted, and then that shut me out, and that's when all those little punks kind of took over my operation and just took over all my business. So they're balling, doing good. I'm now at this point selling coke and making a bunch of money. But the thing about that was, I didn't like about that was, he got all his boys strung out on coke. He did it too, but not like strung out. He'd do it on the weekend, one night, tweak out, whatever. But his boys were just constantly like, yo, let me get an 8-ball, let me get a quarter, let me get a half. And they were just sitting around drinking and doing coke. And I watched them, you know, all of them start to get skinny and gray with bags under their eyes. I'm like, dude, these are your boys, bro. Like, you're freaking stringing your own boys out on dope to make a buck. That's foul shit right there, man. I lost a lot of respect for him. And I already didn't like him. I already beat his ass like 10 times or slapped him around or whatever. But by this point, this is after I squashed the beef with him so I could get some steroids. And you might remember that story. No, I might have never even told that story, man. I'll have to tell that story on a completely different day because it's a long story. And how I reconnected, we squashed the beef with him was all to get a steroid plug in Mexico. He was living in Arizona. I ran him right out the state, slapped him around so many times. He's like, I'm out of here. You know, he knew I was going to kill him, and he's just tired of running into me. He's tired of me every time I see him, slap him up. So he's like, I'm gonna move to Arizona with my family, and, you know. And then I called him one day and said, yo, actually he was on the phone with my friend Brian. I took the phone and said, yo, I need a plug on roids. You're 2 hours from the border. I'll send you some money. Go over the border, get some, send it back, split the profit, blah, blah, blah. And we started. Then he moved back to Detroit and started selling coke. So this is about that time. And I remember, I have to tell the whole story again. When I did squash the beef with him, it was pretty funny. We met at a titty bar, and it was kind of like almost like a mob sit down. It was me and his friend Tony with him, and we sit down and squash the beef and have some drinks at the highest high-end strip club in the city, and the main VIP booth in the back corner. And there was a super hot black girl, and they were all like, "Oh my God!" I said, "I bet you $500 I'll get her number." And he was like, "All right." And George goes, "Don't do it. He'll get it. Trust me. Don't do it. I've seen him do it." He's like, "All right, $50." So I put the 50 on the table. And I ended up walking over there and whispering to this chick. She was getting a dance from a dude who had a $1,000 bill in his hand. Some older white dude in a suit had a $1,000 bill, and he was getting a dance from her. And he was facing her, or facing her. She was facing him with her titties in his face, dancing. I snuck up behind him, and I go like this, and she leans over with her titties in his face. And I said, I whispered in her ear, I said, "When you're done taking this old man's money, come holler at me over there." She's like, "All right." And she did. She walked over, she sat on my lap, started feeling me up. She said, "Wow, you're in good shape." And I'd never got a dance from her, never bought her a drink, nothing. We just kicked it for like 20 minutes. And I kind of was like, tapped her on the thigh because she was sitting on my lap. I said, go make your money, girl, man. You ain't making no money with me. You know what I'm saying? Give me your number, I'll call you, and maybe we go out, man. Maybe I'll dance for you. She starts laughing. And I did, and I ended up dating her for a couple of months, kind of. She lived in New York. She actually flew home because her family was here. She worked at the strip club like 2 nights. Every 2 weeks, she'd go there for 2 nights and make like $3,000 and then fly back to New York. She was going to Columbia University. Super smart, freaking beautiful black chick. She ended up with some dude from, she was dating some dude in the NBA, I guess. I called her house, a dude answered the phone. So, and I asked for her, and she gets on the phone. She said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Yo, who's that?" She's like, "Oh, that's my friend. He pays for the Knicks." And I'm like, "Oh, I was going to come to New York." She's like, "Well, you going to come? Come, you stay here with me. We'll go out. We'll do this." I said, yeah, I'll call you back. I'll let you know. I hung up the phone. I'm not freaking trying to compete with freaking some dude playing for the New York Knicks. You know what I'm saying? After that, and I never called her again. Should have, but she liked me. But anyways, back to this is all around the time I had got out of jail. And I was getting back in the game. What the frick? You guys parked at a green light, man. Come on. Sounds like something I would do. And so I call my boy Tony. I'm not going to say his name because he's out there. He'll probably watch this. Tony will know who it is. Roseville kid. Good looking, funny, muscle bound. My boy. We still talk. He's always telling me to come visit him in Chicago, and he wants to come up and see me. He watches some of these videos. All the stories that I'm telling you, he knows them all. He's like, I don't need to listen to any of these stories. I know them. You know what I'm saying? I was with you. And I got a lot of funny stories with him, man. I told a really funny story about the time I took him fishing with me, and I got stopped by the DNR, the cops, and I gave the cops my friend's ID, or didn't. I just knew my friend's information, birthday, and all that stuff. And then I freaking, I said, I don't have my license. I don't have my ID. He said, what's your ID? And I give my friend Mark's information because I had a warrant, so I didn't want to go to jail. I was out fishing with my boy, and then he lets us go and whatever. And then I remember my friends years later saying, man, I remember the time they gave me a fishing without a license ticket. And it wasn't even me on Harson's Island. And I'm like, oh, really? You know, that sucks. And I told him, I said, dude, it was me, dude. I'm sorry. He's like, what? Anyways, but Tony was a good dude, funny freaking dude. And this is about the time that I actually ended up getting a job at Fitness USA. And Tony worked there. My friend Sean worked there. This other big black dude, I can't even remember his freaking name. He was mad cool. He ended up dying from an overdose. Dude was mad cool, man. He loved me too. What the frick was his name, man? Can't remember. This is like the cheapest little car you ever seen. It's got some racing muffler on it. Unbelievable. Listen, I got to call you back because I got to find out where I'm going. I have to. I don't remember the exact way to my new printer's office, and I have a freaking $600 jacket that is going to Australia. Somebody just ordered, so I want to plug in my GPS and go find it. So I'll pick this story up though in a minute after.
Former prisoner and inmate.
You did it.
What are you doing, Guns?
Ah! You bit the hell out of me. Ah!
Wanna see you with your hands up. Going straight to the sky, let me see you put your hands up. Cause we do till we die and we on another level.
I'm at New York City.
To the rest of your body, the hips and got a piece of the pie. Told you once, told you twice that we only got one life.
On the way to achieve success after prison, he's going to share his story with us right now.
Diamond shine, best at night.